Greetings and welcome to Mount Olympus. I am Hercules Invictus, and tonight I am proud to bring you the Diana Montford Show. Greetings and welcome, Diana.
Well, hi there. I am Diana Montford, the world's first transgender television journalist, born male, became female. And tonight we have a change of pace. We will be concentrating on show business celebrities for the foreseeable future. And do I have a guest for us? The great and beautiful Jean Harlow, a glorious blonde movie star who died in 1937, who was Marilyn Monroe's childhood idol. Well, we have the definitive world famous expert on Jean Harlow, Mr. Darrell Rooney, who wrote the magnificent book, which you should all get just for the visuals. It's beautiful, called Harlow in Hollywood. He has he lives in Los Angeles. He has visited all of her extant houses, and he's just a miracle. And he is also a renowned animator in his own right, having worked for Disney for many years. And next month we'll be interviewing Darrell about his own illustrious career. So if you're into animation, next month, third Saturday of the month, that's when we'll be interviewing Darrell about his own wonderful career. But right now, we're going to talk about the late, great Jean Harlow. Hi, Darrell. How are you?
I'm fine, Diana. How are you doing?
Just fine. Can you tell us who Jean Harlow was?
Well, you set it up very well, so I'll just follow through and I'll say before Renee Rapp, current actress singer, before Madonna, before Marilyn, there was Jean Harlow. She was the original Platinum Blonde, a name given to her by Howard Hughes Corporation when he launched her into the cinema stratosphere in 1930 in Hell's Angels. She was known for being a funny, sexy woman, first blonde who was very sexy and very funny. And that's the key to her. That's who Marilyn wanted to be when she saw her in photographs, and she got that career.
Marilyn, you could say that Jean was Marilyn's babysitter because according to Marilyn, her foster families would leave her at the Chinese theater and she would stay all day and obviously watch Harlow movies and be strongly influenced. Very strongly influenced.
I think I heard a story recently. I'm going to say it was one of her foster parents who told her, "You're going to be a movie star just like Jean Harlow."
That was Grace McKee, her foster aunt, the mother's best friend. And she would take her to beauty salons and have her hair done and put lipstick and powder on her. And you're going to be another Jean Harlow baby. You'll see. And damn if she wasn't.
Well, now that early information.
Yes. Now, Jean, unlike poor Marilyn, came from quite an illustrious family. She was not sadly orphaned or put in foster care. She was quite the pampered little princess as a child, wasn't she?
Well, on a physical level, yes. On an emotional level, I would say she had a very difficult childhood. You know, she is a child of divorce. And while she was raised in upper middle class, her father was a very successful dentist in Kansas City, and her mother was a society lady. She had aspirations to do more with her life, to lead a much more exciting life. And had she been born...
You mean the mother?
The mother. If the mother had been born, 80 years later, she would have been a manager somewhere in some capacity, probably in the film business. That's what she loved. So she wasn't happy being a housewife in Kansas City and, began to act out and have boyfriends, which was not appropriate. So the daughter, Harleen Carpenter, who is our movie star Jean Harlow's real name, she was never allowed to have friends come over to her house because her mother wasn't respectable. Ultimately, the division between her parents reached the breaking point in 1922 when her mother divorced her husband, took sole custody of Harleen, and headed off to Hollywood so that Mother Jean could become a movie star, which never materialized.
Today, I don't think people can understand how outrageously scandalous both divorce and going to Hollywood would have been in the Midwest, Missouri, to be exact, in 1922. It was like, I really want to be a prostitute, you know? It was
Yeah,
incredible.
Yes. Missouri is considered part of southern United States in terms of social customs and culture. And so that was just not done. And, the other thing that Mother Jean, which her daughter, movie star Jean Harlow, inherited, was to walk around the house in a negligee, a bathrobe negligee type thing, and meet guests outside in a negligee and be photographed while she was visiting in Kansas City in a negligee outside, which that's scandalous. Scandalous.
Absolutely scandalous. Even as recently as the 90s, I once took out the garbage in my father's house wearing a long black kimono, which I bought in Chinatown. I never heard the end of it. How could you? Showing yourself that way. It was from neck to feet. So, yeah, I can relate. But Jean went to the Hollywood School for Girls, Jean meaning Harleen, the future Jean Harlow, and was classmates with Irene Mayer, who later became Irene Mayer Selznick, and a lot of interesting people there. And she was a great beauty even then. Irene Mayer was sort of a frenemy and called her the baby Jaritza, after a gorgeous blonde opera diva named Jaritza. And another father of one of the daughters said the others just walked. Harleen sashayed.
Exactly.
So Harlow was a very sexy and mature-looking young girl, wasn't she?
She absolutely was. And part of that, I'm actually looking things up to quote while we're talking. Her mother wanted her daughter to be empowered, and she wanted her daughter to have, control over men, that she could use her sexuality to advance herself in the world. And,
well, there wasn't. There were no other ways, unless you were Madame Curie. The best and easiest way was the easiest way, to have powerful rich men fall in love with you and use those men to get where you wanted to go.
Which is very much Mother Jean's mindset, and she definitely groomed her daughter for that. I'm going to quote something. This is from one of Harleen's schoolmates in Kansas City. Harleen tried so hard to be like the rest of us. She'd never been allowed to be. She wasn't permitted to have friends or be normal. She was made to be a woman before she was a teenager. That's kind of a tough road to hoe.
It is, but given the fact that Jean, the movie star, died at 26, it's a good thing that she started her life early. And, there are many ways to be a good mother. And while I don't agree with Mother Jean's ideas of child rearing, I think she was trying to give her daughter a successful life as she, Mother Jean, interpreted a successful life.
Yeah, I agree completely. I think that Mother Jean saw herself very much a modern woman, not a throwback to the 19th century. And she wanted her daughter to have as much control over her own life as she could. Although Mother Jean was the one who had control over her life, not the daughter.
Yes, but Mother Jean was used to her own father, Sam Harlow's control over her life, so she probably saw control as a form of love.
Undoubtedly, yes. Well, you're very well read, Diana. You are on the ball with all of this.
She's been my idol, Jean Harlow, since I was 12 years old. I don't know as much as you know, but I know a lot.
Well, I'm telling you, I know a million things about someone I've never met. Isn't it funny?
Well, I never. Both of us were born 19 years after she died, 18 years, whatever.
Yeah.
So neither of us has ever met her, but
Yeah.
we've met her. Let's talk about later. Let's not forget to talk about the painting Farewell to Earth and the metaphysical aspect of it. Okay, now Jean Harlow goes to Hollywood. Let's truncate this. She and her mother, the father of Mother Jean, says, "Well, I'm not supporting you in this. Get back here." So they go back. They stop in Chicago. They meet Marino Bello, who presumably is a waiter in a hotel restaurant. And I don't know if I'm right about this, but Mother Jean marries Marino. They all go back to Kansas City. The grandfather's apoplectic. There was great anti-Italian prejudice in those days, so this is like driving him nuts. Like, you married what? And Mother Jean says, "Well, I love him." And okay, fine. And then they decide, Harleen is sent to Ferry Hall, I believe, and she meets this dashing young millionaire, gazillionaire, multimillionaire, Charles McGrew, whose parents sadly had died in, I believe, a boating accident. So Harleen quits school at 16, marries Charles McGrew, and they decide to move to Beverly Hills because Beverly Hills is a lovely place and the movie industry is hopping. And although Harleen doesn't want to be an actress, she remembers how nice it was in Southern California. So they go there. Mama hears about this and says, "You know what? I really like Southern California. Marino, Pat, we're going to go live with Jean and Chuck." So they do. Charles McGrew does not like Mother Jean. She did everything she could to break him up before. Excuse me, until she realized how rich he was. Jean is a married woman at 16. Not unusual at that time, by the way. But today, child molestation. Charles is only about 3 years older. And they are now, all four of them, Chuck, Harleen, Mother Jean, and Marino, living in Los Angeles. Now what happens?
Well, I'm going to make some slight adjustments with what you've just said. Marino was the sort of like the maitre d' of the College Inn in Chicago, and so he had married well. There was money, and Mother Jean is kind of a gold digger. She wants to marry someone who's rich, so she thinks he's rich. He thinks she's rich. They have great lust for each other and get married, and then find out neither of them really have money.
It's sort of personal property.
Yeah.
The film, Personal Property.
Right. So there was certainly friction between Marino and Mother Jean once the cat was out of the bag. They came to Hollywood because Harleen had married Chuck, moved to Hollywood, and just was ill-equipped to be a wife. She just couldn't manage him. And he also was drinking heavily, and I think it was trying to numb himself from the loss of his parents. And he could be violent when he was drunk. She didn't know how to handle it. And so her mother came to help her.
Although, excuse me, it was not unusual for people who were young in the 1920s to be sort of like 1960s people. If 1960s young people like drugs, 1920s young people loved liquor because that was the cool thing to do.
And also, Prohibition was going on, so it was also naughty.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Anyway, so Harleen and Chuck had arrived here in the end of January of 1928, and he bought her a house in Beverly Hills. So he gave her a LaSalle car to drive around. And a friend of hers, Rosalie Roy, who was doing extra work at Fox, needed to head over to the studio. So Harleen drove her in her car, because she was curious to see what a movie studio was like. It was glamorous and appealing. She got noticed by casting directors and were given letters of introduction so she could go to start doing casting calls. She wasn't particularly interested, but when her mother heard about it, all of her own personal ambition to become a movie star, she transferred onto her daughter and decided, I'm going to make you a star. And that's really where the friction happened between Chuck and Mother Jean. You know, he was fine for her to be a trophy wife who would go off and do, you know, a couple of days extra work. But when she started being absent all the time, that's when he got annoyed. And of course, Mother Jean was not going to back down.
Well, yes, but Jean also, Harleen, also posed for Edwin Bauer Hesser. And Chuck later tried to use those photographs in his divorce suit, didn't he?
Yes.
She posed nude, is my point.
So she had been hired by, oh my gosh, I've got his.
Laurel and Hardy? Hal Roach.
Hal Roach, thank you. I had the book in the other room. I can see his face, and I couldn't remember his name. Hal Roach gave her a 5-year contract in December of 1928, and she worked with Stan Laurel and Oliver Hardy, and did a couple of things, and supposedly her grandfather, Skip Harlow, saw her in a undressed wearing just a teddy on film with Laurel and Hardy and had a fit and told her he wanted her out of films, and she complied. That's one version. The other version is that Mother Jean was impatient. You know, two reelers wasn't going to get what she wanted for her daughter and for herself. So she got out of the Hal Roach contract by saying that her husband didn't want her to work. Hal Roach tore up the contract. Next thing you know, the minute she turns 18, she poses semi-nude for Edwin Bauer Hesser. So she's naked, but she's wearing this diaphanous scarf that's always...
And excuse me, it should be pointed out that Edwin Bauer Hesser had photographed Gloria Swanson, the Ziegfeld Follies beauties. He was an art photographer. This wasn't like Betty Page at her craziest. This was considered a very artistic thing to do, but needless to say, her husband did not appreciate it.
Her husband did not appreciate it, no. And, you know, the as artistic as the photographs are, and they are like, you know, a little woodland nymph dancing through the forest. That's kind of what the imagery is. But, you know, those photographs had a purpose, which is, you know, to get them into studios and in front of producers' eyes. Oh, here's a girl will take her clothes off. Let's bring her in. That's what's going on.
And no doubt it was Mother Jean who said, "Do it, you idiot, do it now."
Oh, yes, and Mother Jean was there for the photo shoot. So
Oh,
she was behind it all the way. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, Harleen didn't do it on her own. Oh, no, Mother Jean was there.
Wow, that is mind-blowing. Yeah. Okay.
Well, you know, that's Mother Jean for you. A momager.
And then some.
Yeah, so she's free of her two-reeler contract. She's done these photos. Next thing you know, she gets her first speaking part in a Clara Bow movie. It's a small part, but it's, you know, not a second lead. I don't know if you'd call it a third lead, a walk-on. She's present in a handful of stills with Jean Arthur and Clara Bow.
Mm-hmm.
And
she looks very lovely there in the film. She's not yet the Jean Harlow we know, but she's a very pretty young woman.
Yeah, she's very pretty, and she's, you know, dressed like a flapper, and you know, she hasn't quite relaxed yet on film, but she certainly has started on her road to success. Initially, Clara Bow was not happy with her being there because she was so attractive, and then she took her under her wing and made sure she was in the photos. So she
Well, Gene
ultimately
and
liked
Chuck,
her.
yes, Gene and Chuck lived 2 doors away from Clairvaux.
That's right, on Linden Drive.
Yeah.
So, so so one of the lead actors is James Hall in this Clairvaux movie called Saturday Night Kid. He's also one of the 2 leads in Howard Hughes' Hell's Angels movie that started out as a silent movie and now is going to be redone as a sound movie. And it's taking forever to film it. The leading lady, who is a Swedish or Norwegian, I forget which, has gotten impatient with it, gone off to New York to do a play, and Howard Hughes washes his hands of her, and he's looking for a new leading lady. And he wants somebody
Excuse
who...
me.
Yeah.
And everyone is tested. They tested Selma Todd, who also would have been excellent. Any number of beautiful blonde women tested for the lead in Hell's Angels, and Howard Hughes kept saying, no, 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 next.
Yeah, I think he wanted someone that was either unknown or someone inexpensive. They just had to be sexy and be a very obvious reason why 2 brothers would fight among themselves. And she was unknown and she was sexy, and she got the lead. Changed her life.
Yes, and all right, let's shorten this. She then goes on a personal appearance tour because Howard Hughes has no immediate plans to put her in another film. He loans her out to various studios. She makes roughly 6 films in 1931 in between her personal appearance tours. And all this time, Paul Byrne, a producer at Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer, third in line. First there's Mayer, then there's Thalberg, then there's Byrne. He takes an interest in her career, a genuine interest, not a cheap hustle. He's a real person with a real soul, and he really likes her, and he tries to help her.
Yeah, the one thing about Paul Byrne, let me just interject. Paul Byrne was known in Hollywood as the father confessor, and his big thing was to help out struggling starlets and help them up the ladder of success. He'd done it with
including
Garbo,
Joan Crawford.
with Joan Crawford, certainly, and now he saw Jean Harlow, and she was somebody who was, just having a really hard time. What she wanted was roles where she was sympathetic, and she felt like that's what was missing in all of the movies that she was making.
She's brilliant, though. I mean, she, for example, got the female lead, more or less the lead, in Public Enemy because the original woman cast as that, Louise Brooks, decided she'd go take off with her lover for New York, and then Jean got it. And even when Jean is bad, she's good. I mean, you can't look any... That awful monologue in Public Enemy, my bashful
exactly
boy.
The one you mean.
Yes.
Yes,
but you can't look anywhere else. She's great.
Yeah.
I mean, she's lousy, but she's great.
Mm-hmm. Yes. She is magnetic on film. And she's fleshy. You just feel her skin. She's just got that sensuality that's unmistakable.
And
so
anyway,
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
You're doing very good encapsulating things.
Well, okay, so let's really move ahead. She signs a contract with Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer because Paul Byrne basically engineers it. She is very happy. She gets the lead in Red-Headed Woman, one of the films that caused the production code to roar into action that had existed for a while, but now it was sincerely put into effect. She marries Paul Byrne, this man who's been her mentor, who tells her that he respects her and her intelligence. She was always a great reader. She wanted to be a writer. She marries him. And now what happens?
So, Jean Harlow always said that friendship was the cornerstone of love in her books. And she and Paul Byrne had started as friends. And in the My personal opinion is that in the frenzy of the excitement and success of MGM does buy her contract, she makes Redheaded Woman, and it's a smash hit, and she is propelled into the stratosphere in Hollywood, where I don't think anyone really thought that she would get there, certainly not that quickly. And in that giddy excitement,
or even at all,
success, or maybe at all. But in that giddy excitement, I think that she felt like the feelings that she had for Paul Byrne were love, and that, yes, she would marry him. And he had his own personal demons, and it's something that she was never able to overcome. He had a common law wife named Dorothy Millette, which was not well known. And they had lived together in the teens and early 20s in New York, and she had suffered a nervous breakdown, and when she came out of the sanitarium, she really didn't know who he was anymore. So their relationship was basically over. He put her in the Algonquin Hotel, paid all of her bills, and he moved to Hollywood in 1920 and started over. Writer, director, became a film executive, highly respected, marries Jean Harlow, and Dorothy Millette all of a sudden decides she's going to move to Hollywood. She wants to be starred in religious films. So her illness has taken the form of, religious fervor. And so she is forcing, how would I put it? She wants to have a meeting with him, and he can't get out of it. And so it's arranged on Labor Day weekend, and he doesn't want Jean Harlow there. So she goes off to her mother's place for dinner. He's supposed to join them because her stepfather has gone off fishing, but she doesn't want her mother to be alone. So she's with her mother. Dorothy Millette appears with Paul Byrne, and there's a confrontation. This is what she wants. Is she arguing about him being married to Jean Harlow when they're common law husband and wife? We'll never know.
Which, excuse me, by the way, at that time, after 4 years of being a common law spouse in New York State, it was considered a valid legal marriage. So she did have a leg to stand on.
Yes. So the publicity would ruin Jean Harlow's career, would, ruin Paul Byrne's career, but it would also ruin Jean Harlow's career.
Excuse me. And also,
Mm-hmm.
And also, what with all the other scandals, Fatty Arbuckle, William Desmond Taylor, all the other minor scandals like Alma Rubens running through the streets and demanding heroin. People in the rest of the country were pretty fed up with Hollywood and thought it was a modern day Sodom and Gomorrah. Mm-hmm. So it could even have ended the movie industry.
Yeah. Well, no one had survived the scandal yet. So these were the things that were going on behind the scenes with Jean Harlow and Paul Byrne. So did Jean Harlow go to the house and meet Dorothy Millette? Because that's certainly one of the stories that exists, and that she says to Paul Byrne, as soon as you figure out which one of us you're married to, let me know. And then she leaves and spends the night with her mother. In the morning, the butler goes to Paul Byrne's bedroom to wake him up and finds him in the change room naked in front of a mirror with a bullet in his brain. He passes out on the floor. His wife, who's the maid or the cook, comes in.
Winifred, yes.
Yes, Winifred Carmichael. She sees both of them and she thinks they're both dead. And so she does what she was instructed to do. You don't call the police, you call MGM. Mr. Mayor and the Thalberg head over and start doing damage control.
And I personally think Dorothy Millette killed him. You disagree?
Well, there are plenty of theories. Paul Byrne killed himself. Dorothy Millette shot him. He died by his own gun. So did he leave his gun somewhere visible so that Dorothy, in her anger in his bedroom says, I'm so mad I could shoot you. I could kill you. Oh, look, there's a gun. I think I will. Is that what happened? Did she threaten
Well, she was a
him,
mental
leave?
patient,
Well, yes, but you shouldn't necessarily assign total instability to somebody who you don't know what they're capable of. That makes it just an assumption. Either way, my point is was the gun visible? How did the gun become visible? You don't usually leave guns out on tables. That's dangerous. Anyway, so either he shot himself or she shot him, or that there was kind of a threat and a scuffle. You're threatening me, I could, maybe he threatens her back and they've got the gun and scuffle and it goes off. The only thing that's odd about that is that the gun is right at his temple. That's where the gunpowder burns are.
He could have been playing a game and saying, thanks to you, I'm going to kill myself. She would have run to him and said, no, come on, give me the gun. Oh, my God. It goes off.
Yeah, it could be. It could be. So the position that I try and take is I don't have the answer, and it doesn't matter to me which one it is, whether he killed himself or it was an accident or she killed him. I just know that Jean Harlow was not there to witness it. And maybe someday another piece of information will clarify the puzzle. Right now, we don't know. If he did, he did. If she did, she did. Either one, it won't make a difference to me. I just would like to know. So Dorothy Millette leaves. Paul Byrne either is alive and shoots himself because he's going to be, unfortunately, ruining Jean Harlow's life, or he's already in a pool of blood and dead. Mr. Mayer and Thalberg arrive at the Easton Drive house and assess the situation. And they, Paul Byrne's dead. They can't do anything to help him. Their major asset at the studio is Jean Harlow, so they're going to save her career. And I think that what they did was saw this, find out where was Harlow. She wasn't here. Okay, if this is a suicide, we need a reason for it, and they're looking for a suicide note. So they find a document that they decide is their suicide note, and they basically feed Paul Byrne to the wolves and imply that he killed himself because he was impotent, couldn't satisfy his wife, and couldn't take it.
Which is not true, because Sally Rand, the famous stripper, came forward and said, well, I was his girlfriend for a while, and he sure wasn't impotent with me. And he tried to kill himself when Barbara Lamar refused to marry him. He did have a suicidal bent, and his mother did kill herself. So maybe he did kill himself. Who knows?
Who knows? Who knows? I think that he certainly had his own issues. I think he might have been manic depressive in a time when that term didn't exist. He was someone who was a very, very volatile emotionally. When he was a director, he was known to be really volatile, which is really surprising. Directors are usually calm and steady. So I think that he had his own issues. So this may be a situation where he went down that dark road that night and made a mistake and shot himself, or that it was a scuffle. Maybe someday we'll know.
Well, anyway, it's a huge scandal. People are accusing Jean Harlow of murder.
Yeah.
She, quote unquote, tried to commit suicide, not really. But Mayor
Yeah, not
supposedly tells her, now run to the balcony, I'll grab you before you jump.
really.
It's
Yeah.
not much of a jump. It's like a 3-foot jump, but still. And he hypes this as, oh, she was so distraught. I saved her at the last moment. The poor girl. We have to show her every consideration. And somehow, scandal is averted. Public sympathy turns to Harlow, even though at his funeral people say terrible things to her.
Yes, yeah. Well, what happened is Mr. Mayer is the one who put forth the impotence story, and is doing that to make Jean Harlow sympathetic. And
Yeah.
she refuses to go along with it and insists there was nothing wrong with my marriage. And then the whole Dorothy Millette thing happens, which MGM wasn't prepared for. Oh, there was another Mrs. Paul Byrne, a common law wife.
Excuse me, and we did not mention that 2 days after Byrne died, Dorothy Millette jumped from a riverboat into the San Francisco Bay, I believe, and drowned herself, or somehow she drowned. It could have been Mayor's agent pushing her in. Who knows?
Well, certainly if you're writing a movie about it, it's MGM people who push her off the boat, because that's certainly the most interesting thing. But they didn't know really who she was, and they certainly didn't know where she was, so it couldn't have been. I think she, realized that her golden goose was gone and was distraught and jumped off the boat and killed herself. So the thing that Harlow did that to me that allowed her to survive the scandal was that she insisted on preserving her husband's good name, no matter how much MGM.
What a great girl, huh?
She would not say anything bad about him. And I think MGM was smart enough to go, let her just say it. Because at the end of the day, what she's doing is standing up for her husband. She's a noble heart, a noble spirit. And that was the key to the public forgiving her.
Well, and also, she did something wonderful. I don't know if MGM pushed her to do it or she got the idea herself. She paid for Dorothy Millette's burial. And on the tombstone, it says, Dorothy Millette Byrne.
Exactly.
Jean was a great kid. She was a good person,
Yeah. Yeah. And I certainly that was leaked to the press. So people did know it. And I think that's where public sympathy swayed in her direction. And she was seen as somebody who was victimized by this impossible triangular relationship that she did not know about. So she survived a scandal. She's the first one to survive a major scandal in Hollywood.
And she went on to, she was working on Red Dust when this happened. She went on to have success after success. And then, oh dear, they import a hot, sexy butcher from New York, I believe, the famous boxer Max Baer. And Jean develops an obsession with the married Max Baer. And this causes more problems. She follows him around. She stalks him, basically. And although he dates her a few times, he finds her sort of dull and provincial. She's a mama's girl. And now what happens?
Well, this is Max Baer's married, and his wife, Dixie Dunbar, is not pleased that Jean Harlow is messing around with her husband. So she threatens to name Jean Harlow as a correspondent in a divorce. And MGM is not happy about this at all. They just got her through one scandal, and now here's another one, potentially rocking her career. And this is at a time when, the motion picture code and the women's religious movements were really gaining power.
Women's clubs, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so MGM said, you got to fix this yourself. We did our part. And so she proposed to her favorite cameraman, who adored her, and she liked him very much. She convinced herself that she loved him, and she proposed. He said yes, and they eloped. Scandal averted.
Yes, and she divorced him about 9 months later, stating that he read in bed, which boggled everyone's mind. He's in bed with Jean Harlow and he's reading, but okay. And
Well,
you
not
know,
Jean Harlow's
so
most shining moment when she's on the stand in court. Why do you want to divorce your husband? Well, because I have to get a good night's sleep, and he's reading in bed. So it's taken out of context, but it's just not her most shining moment.
no, but then she then dates around a little, doesn't meet anyone. She's working, and then she meets William Powell. Oh dear! Now what happens?
Well, he wasn't born in Kansas City, but he grew up there, and so they have the same kind of roots.
A few
And
blocks away from each other, even though they didn't know each other, and he's
Yeah.
only a year younger than Mother Jean.
Right. So they have, the same basic Midwestern values, and he is urbane and charming and smart, and he introduces her to another level of society in Hollywood, and she's just captivated by him and falls in love hard, and he falls for her, and this is the next guy. She's going to marry this guy. He's got the same values as her, so she's smitten. She's ready to go. And
But he refuses to marry her, having been married to
he had
Carol
just
Lombard.
exactly, and that didn't work out, and they stayed friends. But he just didn't want to marry another blonde bombshell. He wasn't ready to face that, And Jean Harlow came with baggage. There was that mother.
And he did something wonderful. He was very suspicious of Jean Harlow's stepfather, Marino Bello, saying that he was going off to visit his mines. What mines? So William Powell hired a private detective and found out that 25% of Jean Harlow's income was being siphoned off to Marino's mistress in Mexico, I believe.
Right.
And that made Mother Jean divorce Marino.
Yes, and this all happened within 3 weeks in August, September of 1935. The Time magazine article, Jean Harlow's on the cover of Time magazine. That is prestigious. An article about her. This is August 19th, 1935, when it came out, and fantastic article, really smart, really well researched.
It is. It's a great article.
And the writer says that they can't quite figure out what's going on with Marino. Always going down to Mexico, to look after the gold, or are they silver mines? So William Powell, being the thin man, a detective, hires an actual detective to go down to Mexico to find out about the gold and silver mines, and finds out there really aren't any mines that are bringing in money. He's just has a few mistresses. So Mother Jean is of course infuriated that he has, lied to her and wasted her daughter's money. So she divorces him on September 13th. 3 weeks later. That's how fast that happened. That's pretty fascinating.
And then Jean and Mother Jean resume living together, and they downsize thanks to William Powell. He says, she has a huge white mansion, the house that Hare built, she calls it, in Beverly Glen. He says, you don't need this, come on. So they downsize. They move into a modest middle-class home, very nice, but not tremendously luxurious. And William Powell and Jean are dating, and she really, really wants to marry him. She's ready to retire. She's willing to retire. She loves him. She wants to be a wife and mother. He, of course, says, no. I don't want to marry anyone half the world wants to go to bed with. Thanks, but I love you, but I don't want to get married. So, okay. So, eventually they start seeing other people while all this is going on, right? Mm-hmm. Now, segue back to when Jean Harlow's 15. She goes to Camp Chautauqua, I believe it's called.
Chautauqua.
And she contracts scarlet fever. Well, she gets over the scarlet fever. Mother Jean goes to the camp and nurses her. But no one realizes, because of the time it is, people in those days were medically unsophisticated, that her kidneys had become infected. She's a
Right.
15-year-old girl. Her kidneys are infected. No one knows this. She doesn't know it. She lives out her life. By then, she's in her mid-20s. She starts feeling run down. She has wisdom teeth trouble. The mother wants all 4 wisdom teeth removed at once. She goes to the hospital. The doctor doesn't want to do it. She says, all at once. Mother Jean, all at once. She's like a B. Arthur type. Do it my way. So he does. Jean dies for a minute on the table. They bring her back to life. But she never really recovers. And she then goes to Catalina and gets the granddaddy of all sunburns. Something is really wrong with this girl. Take it from there.
The Catalina thing actually happened in August. She got a really bad sunburn. So what was going on was that her immune system was breaking down all through 1936, and she was going from sun poisoning to makeup poisoning to having a bad flu when she went back east to Washington. Then she gets impacted wisdom teeth, and she's just not bouncing back. People that knew her and worked with her knew when she'd been out the night before she was out late, because her skin would have like a gray pallor to it. Her ankles would swell, her joints would swell. So they all knew that her health wasn't the best.
And since the Paul Byrne issue, she'd been drinking fairly heavily when she was not working. Never when she worked, but in the evenings and weekends, she did binge drink.
Yeah, well, I think William Powell is probably the core of most of that, because she's caught in the middle where he won't marry her. She loves him. He loves her. He just doesn't think they can make a go of it. And she's never been turned down before like that. She doesn't know how to deal with it. And the wisdom teeth thing is a problem because they never really healed properly. She goes right into Saratoga, and she's still draining her gums while she's filming. And
there were no antibiotics in 1937. There was nothing. You could die of getting your finger scratched by a rose bush. So they really, you did have to drain your mouth and hope sepsis wouldn't invade your body, as it did Valentino's after an appendectomy.
Yeah, and I think it was Louise Brooks. That was her take on it, that Jean got sepsis, and that's what killed her. So she passed out on the set and went home, and ultimately she had uremic poisoning, nephritis. It was kidney disease, and that's something that usually strikes old people. It takes a long time for that kind of thing to manifest. And the doctor asked Mother Jean, whatever happened to her in her younger life? Is there something that could have begun this cycle of her kidneys being damaged so badly, which comes to that Camp Chautauqua illness of scarlet fever. One of the offshoots of scarlet fever is a thing called glomerulonephritis, where the infection goes down into your body and it sort of locates somewhere, and then you're going to have trouble.
That also killed Mozart. And the funny thing is, in 1937, in 1937, medical science was much closer to the methods of Mozart's times than they are to our time. Strange, but true.
Yeah, antibiotics weren't created until World War II. So It was much more. Now, when you were hospitalized, you were there for a long time. Jean Harlow had her appendix out in 1933. She was in the hospital for 18 days. Took a long time to heal.
And Ruben Mamoulian gave her gonorrhea. Thanks a lot, Ruben.
Oh, I've never heard that.
Oh, yeah, and he gave it to Garbo, too.
Well, he gets around.
Yeah. But so she's dying, and she's 26. And
so
Irving
she certainly
Shulman.
doesn't know she's dying. Yeah.
She doesn't even know she has kidney failure. Even the doctors don't know. They misdiagnose it as an inflamed bladder. and give her the exact opposite. They give her glucose injection, something like that, which is the exact wrong thing to do with someone with nephritis.
Yeah, I think they gave her sulfa drugs. So all they did was make it more uncomfortable for her. So at first she rallied, and then she crashed, and the doctor's assistant came in, who was a friend of the family, looked at her medical records, and saw that her, what is it? I can't remember what it is right now. He saw that something was off. This was not about gallbladder. This was kidney disease.
And she was in the final stage of it, yes.
She's in the final stages, yes. So all he could do was take her to the hospital and make her as comfortable as possible.
And they shaved her head. They were going to drill, because of cerebral edema, her head was swollen because she couldn't eliminate waste. They were going to drill holes in her head, but then they were afraid of brain seepage. This is horrific.
Yeah.
She's a 26-year-old young woman, and she's dying in a gruesome and grisly way. And yes, indeed. And she dies. They call the fire department. They work on her for minutes, 20 minutes, something like that, with an inhalator. Nothing doing. She's dead, and she's not coming back. And this shocks the world. This shocks the entire world. She's a big star everywhere, and this is truly shocking. You know, if she died in a car accident or something, but this is just mind-blowing. How is this possible? You know, plenty of people died young enough.
Yeah. As far as the public knew, Jean Harlow was this robustly healthy woman. And all of a sudden, at 26, she's dead. So the rumors started flying, all kinds of terrible
Awful rumors, evil rumors, that she got syphilis, a bad abortion, all sorts of things.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah, all these things. Or that her mother had caused her death by withholding medical help, which wasn't true.
Irving Shulman, the man who wrote the 1964 biography, Harlow, an intimate biography, insisted that Mother Jean was a rabid Christian Scientist and refused Jean any kind of medical intervention. Not true.
Right.
Jean Harlow had doctors from the beginning at Mother Jean's insistence. And, what can I say? Mother Jean did all she could to keep the baby alive.
Yeah, the reason that rumor started was because Louis B. Mayer went to Jean Harlow's house, and he offered a doctor, which was the doctor that he had used in 1932 to claim that Paul Byrne was impotent. And there was no way Mother Jean was going to let that doctor in the house. And so she told him, we're Christian Scientists, and I have a prayer group here praying for my daughter right now. You can't come in. So he went back to MGM and just said, there's nothing we can do. She's killing her daughter.
He actually shouted in the outer office, this is nothing but legalized murder.
Well,
he was really very angry.
And very dramatic, for sure.
Well,
but yes, it was a terrible situation, but she was not going to give up control to Mr. Mayer for anything. So, she had all the medical help that she needed, but, she, kidney disease is not something that you survived in 1937.
Anyway, so Jean's dead. Mother Jean, clever cutie that she is, gives the story to the papers. Wonderful William Powell, my daughter's betrothed, has paid for a beautiful marble crypt. Well, this came as news to William Powell. $30,000. Mother Jean basically hustled him out of the price of a 3-person crypt. She was buried in it when she died in 1958. William Powell later married a woman named Diana Lewis and is buried with her. And Jean Harlow entered into legend. And she became, as Marilyn said, Marilyn Monroe once said, the day Jean Harlow died, everyone in the schoolyard was very quiet. and that other famous person who said the day the baby died, there wasn't one sound in the commissary. Yeah.
Mickey Rooney. Yeah, you know, one of the things that I've got is I've got the contract addendum for Forest Lawn that William Powell had from 1957. And what this document says is that there are 3 crypts. Jean Harlow's in one. Mother Jean is going to be in the second one, and the third one, which was for me, I am not going to be buried in. And furthermore, no one will ever be buried in that third crypt.
Too bad. I was going to save my pennies. Okay.
A contract that can't be changed. So what's interesting to me about this document is that why did this happen? It's got to be because Mother Jean is winding down, and now she wants to make sure before she dies that no one else is going to be in that crypt. She already knows William Powell's not going to be there. He's been married since 1940 to Diana Lewis. So she wants to make sure no one is going to be in that third crypt. And to me, that's why that contract addendum exists. Fascinating.
Yes, and there she is forevermore. Jean and her mother.
Just the 2 of them, just the way Mother Jean liked it.
I was just going to say that, and it's a most unhealthy codependent relationship.
Yes,
but it worked for them.
Yes, and so let me just interject. Jean Harlow, that's her mother's name. Her mother is the real Jean Harlow.
Mm-hmm.
Her real name, the daughter, is Harleen Carpenter. She takes her mother's name, Jean Harlow, to be a movie star. So that's how extreme that kind of relationship is.
And Mother Jean often signed Harlow's autograph to photographs and wrote letters to people as Jean Harlow, the movie star.
Mm-hmm. Always. Yes.
I should intrude, but we have around 5 minutes left, and to wrap up the show and share contact information.
Sure.
Well, okay. I strongly urge anyone and everyone, see Jean Harlow's films. They're great. They're hilarious. She's beautiful. She's very relatable. You don't have to. She's not Garbo. She's not a goddess on a pedestal. She's a goddess on the neighborhood bus. She's a great gal. She's funny.
You want to see Dinner at 8? You want to see Blonde Bombshell? You want to see Red Dust?
Absolutely, and even some Libeled Lady, Personal Property. Reckless is sort of lousy, but it has its moments. A Girl from Missouri. It's funny.
Yeah,
they're all great films. See every Jean Harlow film you can. You will not be sorry. Daryl, please tell us how we can get your fabulous book.
You can get it on Amazon, but you could also just buy it right from me and get it signed, and I'll send it to you. So I think I'll let them contact you to reach me, or you can reach me through Facebook, Instagram, Harlow in Hollywood. Private message me there. We'll do it that way.
Sounds great.
Yes, the book came out in 2011 for Jean Harlow's 100th birthday. Was so popular that it was reissued 2 years ago with new photos and new information, including the discovery of the 1937 painting Farewell to Earth that has been missing for 50 years, fell in my lap, and I was able to rescue it and bring it back to Hollywood. All of that.
Daryl was a genius to do that.
Incredibly lucky. So
there's a metaphysical angle. A psychic told Daryl that Jean was there and wanted him to get it.
Yes, I got put to work. The psychic told me she's right here, and she wanted you to bring the painting back to Hollywood. So I did.
Anyway, I strongly recommend that you contact Daryl and get a signed copy of Harlow in Hollywood. And it is the definitive Jean Harlow book. Also, if you're interested in Art Deco, the 1930s, the machinations of Hollywood in the 1930s. He includes contracts, he includes everything. You will be so happy if you get this book. Believe me, there are so many ramifications to this book, so many ways to be interested in it, that it's not just about Jean Harlow. It's about, you know, the political aspect of Metro Goldwyn Mayer and Hollywood in general in the 1930s. And, well, I guess we're out of time. Daryl, you are a delight. You are a genius. It has been wonderful talking with you. I have such admiration for what you've done. And we should all go and pee on Irving Shulman's grave. No, I think you are wonderful.
Well, thanks very much. You know, the one thing I hate about Irving Shulman is that he took the name Mama Rose from Gypsy and transferred it onto Mother Jean, calling her Mama Jean. Complete 1964 invention. Don't call her Mama Jean. She is Mother Jean. She's Mrs. Bello. That's one small thing that I want to correct in the zeitgeist.
Yes, and also
thank you for all of this, Diana. You're so smart. You're so full of information. You didn't even need me.
But it was a delight to have you on, and I hope eventually you'll want to do my television show.
I would love to. We just have to figure out the technology.
Absolutely. Okay,
well,
thank you. And what?
I certainly enjoyed this. It was lots of fun.
Glad.
I could talk for 10 more hours easily.
I'm so sorry it's over. Anyway, Hercules, I guess we're signing off. Oh, one last thing. You can hear the Diana Montford Show on podcast every third Saturday of the month from 9 to 10 New York time, 6 to 7 Los Angeles time. Take it away, Hercules.
Okay, good night. Thank you very much for a fascinating show.
Good night.